There's something magical about the idea of a journey that not only takes you from one place to another, but also changes who you are along the way. The world is full of those kinds of journeys, hidden behind closed doors and in the corners of the night when no one's looking. But tonight, I'll tell you the story of one such journey that began on a midnight train, a train not bound by time or space, but by possibility. The night was unusually cold, with a faint mist hanging in the air, as if the sky itself were holding its breath. In a small, forgotten station, tucked away on the outskirts of a bustling city, stood a solitary train. Its silver body gleamed under the dim light of the station, the windows reflecting the stars above. The clock struck midnight, and the train, which no one seemed to notice, began to slowly rumble to life. Our story begins with a man named Elliot, a quiet and contemplative soul, whose life was marked by routine and regret. He had once been full of dreams, but somewhere along the way, they had slipped through his fingers. He had always been a man of the future, always planning, but never living. His days were filled with work, his nights filled with restlessness, and the in-between moments with the longing for something he couldn't quite reach. Elliot had been walking home from his job when he noticed the train, something about it unusual, almost inviting, the sound of the tracks calling him. His usual path was to head to the bus stop, but tonight something felt different. Something had shifted within him, and in a sudden act of impulsive curiosity, he found himself stepping onto the platform. As he approached, the train doors opened, as though they were waiting for him. "Ticket, sir?" asked a voice from the shadows. A tall figure in a conductor's uniform stood at the entrance, but his face was veiled in darkness. "I don't have one," Elliot muttered, unsure of himself, but something in the conductor's eyes reassured him. "No matter," the conductor said, stepping aside with a small, knowing smile. "This train does not need a ticket. It only requires those who are ready for the journey." The train was empty, save for a few scattered passengers who seemed lost in their own worlds, lost in thought, lost in time. The train had no destination, but that was the mystery, the allure of it. Elliot stepped aboard and sat by a window, watching as the world outside faded into a blur of lights and shadows. As the train moved forward, it felt as if time itself had slipped away. The world he knew, the noise, the chaos, faded into nothing. As the train moved forward, the scenery outside began to change. It was no longer the familiar, dull cityscape. The train passed through lush forests, rolling hills, and sparkling rivers, all bathed in a strange, ethereal glow. It was as though the landscape was alive, shifting with each passing moment. But the most striking part of the journey wasn't the changing landscape. It was the passengers aboard. A woman sat across from him, her face hidden by a veil, but her hands were busy sketching intricate patterns in a notebook. A young man was staring out the window, his gaze distant, as though he were waiting for something. A middle-aged couple sat together in silence, their hands clasped tightly, as if trying to hold on to a memory that was slipping away. Elliot watched them all, each seemingly lost in their own worlds. But as the train continued its journey, something curious began to happen. The passengers' faces started to change, subtly at first, then more dramatically. The woman with the notebook now looked older, her once youthful features marked by time. The young man's eyes became weary, his gaze haunted by years of waiting. The couple, their faces once filled with love, now looked fragile, their expressions strained. Elliot felt a stirring within him, a deep sense of unease. He had seen these people before, not literally, but in some way he understood them. They were all people from his past, faces, moments, dreams he had forgotten or abandoned. The sketchbook, the waiting gaze, the lost love, they were pieces of his own life, scattered in ways he had never fully understood. As the train hurtled forward, Elliot began to realize something that terrified him. The train was taking him not just through a landscape of places, but also through the passage of time itself. Each station they passed seemed to shift into a different moment of his own life, moments he had once cherished and moments he had buried deep in his mind. He saw his younger self, carefree and full of dreams, standing at the edge of the station platform, eyes wide with excitement. He saw his first love, her hand slipping from his as they walked away from each other. He saw his father, once strong, now frail and weak, asking for help that Elliot had never offered. The train began to slow, and the conductor reappeared, standing at the front of the train with a look that seemed to pierce through Elliot's very soul. "Where are we going?" Elliot asked, his voice trembling. The conductor's smile widened. "Wherever you decide to go, Elliot. This train takes you to tomorrow, to the dreams you once abandoned, to the moments you thought you lost." Elliot sat still, overwhelmed by the flood of memories and realizations. He had been so focused on the future that he had forgotten the importance of the present. He had neglected the very things that made life worth living: love, passion, joy, and connection. The train finally came to a stop, and the conductor turned to him, his eyes filled with a deep understanding. "Remember, the journey is not just about where you are going, but about appreciating where you are right now. The past has shaped you, but it does not define you. The future is waiting, but only if you embrace today." Elliot stepped off the train, his heart pounding, and looked around. He was back in the world he knew, but he was not the same. The lessons from the midnight train to tomorrow were etched deeply within him. Lessons about living in the present, about cherishing the moments and people that truly mattered, and about finding the courage to pursue the dreams that still flickered inside him. As the train faded into the night, disappearing into the mist, Elliot knew one thing for certain. He had been given a second chance. The future was no longer something he feared. It was something he could shape, one choice at a time. And so the journey of life is not just about reaching a destination, but about living each moment with intention, about remembering that the dreams you have today are just as important as the ones you'll have tomorrow. Embrace the now and let it guide you to the future you deserve. Remember, the midnight train is always waiting, but only if you're ready to step aboard.